Dean, you're good to go.
Try it again.
Good evening, this is the January 8th, 2020 meeting of the City of Laconia Conservation Commission. I'm Dean Hanson.
Deb Williams?
Lisa Moran.
Mike Foot.
Dick Christopher?
Ashley Ruprecht, Conservation Planner Technician.
Okay, and we are going to start the meeting with a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to change the order of the events here, and we're going to start out with, which one are we starting out with? We're starting out with, which one is it? Which is the title of it on here, Ashley?
It is the second to last, I believe, thing on the agenda for proposed land acquisition.
It's on the back, Dean?
Yep.
Oh, it's on the-
second page.
Okay, we're going to discuss land acquisition.
Says non-public session.
Right, but we're not, the information on this was disseminated to the public last month by mistake. So we're not going to go into non-public session. We're going to do it in the current public session, so. Rusty, you want to guide us through here?
Rusty Berthelite, property owner.
Greetings, Rusty.
How you doing? I purchased this property back in 2006. I was gonna use it as a mitigation for wetlands at one point for a project I was working with at the Weirs. I never did at that point. I know it abuts the state forest, which is conservation land. So I'm looking to donate it to the town for conservation purposes. At this point, it has no use to me at all. I paid, I think, $15,500 for it from the city. At that point, at a tax sale. And a couple of the abutters have shown interest in purchasing it, but I'd rather give it to the town as conservation land, abutting the state forest. You know, I am gonna deduct a tax deduction for it, you know, for what I paid, so, if you have any questions.
Do you know what the taxes are on the property?
It's not much, it's like a couple $100 a year. It's very minimal. I think the assessment is like, 13,000 or 14,000 a year.
Okay, and
So
it's,
it's not gonna impact the tax base.
right. So the property is, how many acres?
About 3 acres, 3.1. And the way that it looks like it was made was to be like maybe an access way at some point from front lots to the back lots. So if somebody bought the front lot, they could make a road easement through there and into the back section, into the back area there, because a lot of those lots are landlocked in there.
Okay,
And that's kind of what it looks like it was because of the shape of it.
And it's 3.5 acres.
Yes.
But it's completely landlocked now. I mean, there's nothing around, I'm just
No,
looking
it's
at,
landlocked.
yeah, I mean, there's no development or anything, okay.
and it's,
But it would kind of stop somebody from going from that lot in front of it to the back lot, because that kind of cuts it off.
Mm.
And stopping development, that's kind of cuts it off a little bit.
I don't,
Because of the shape, I
Who
think
owns
it
number
would be
14 here?
Korea Sisters.
It's on the front,
It's on the front.
oh, okay, so
Wait a
this is Korea
That's number 2.
Korea Girls.
Yeah, no, the lot number, it's, if you look under the Korea's Girls Realty, it says 196-322-14. That 14 is the lot number, and it shows it.
Oh, I get you,
Yeah.
I
So,
get you.
number one is,
So lot 1 is the state of New Hampshire?
right.
No,
space,
no, lot 7,
Yeah.
stated, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I thought
Yes,
you were-
it is.
You're right,
Correct.
I'm sorry, I jumped
Okay,
ahead.
so it does, it's
That's,
above that.
that's the state
Okay.
Yeah.
forest, the conservation land.
Interesting kind of a corridor piece, you know?
What is,
Okay, which one's the state forest? I'm a little
It's
confused.
this one right here, Dick. It's gonna be this
It's real
big one
big.
right
Southern.
here.
One right here?
Right, and so when you look at this overview, and if I could get to this on the screen, I would. You can see here where they've done some patch forestry. This is some
Okay.
test forestry that they did on the state forest.
this is
State
this,
forest.
right.
So this is
But
Korea
where is
Sisters, and this
Lannon's
is
property?
Mike Lannon.
Where's, which one's Lannon's? 7? It looks like.
To the west,
Number 3 on the map.
No.
No, no,
yes.
he was saying Lannon's is number 7.
Yeah, also. I bet you'll find out when you look
Yeah,
this
Oh,
up.
there
you're
you go,
saying, okay,
right.
3 and 7.
So number 1 is the state forest.
Correct.
Okay.
So, all right.
So who owns 17?
17. Oh, that's, you're gonna find that that's gonna be,
Lannon,
no, 17 on the north side is gonna be the Rices, and that's protected now under, conservation
Right, okay.
easement.
now, this is the Weirs Boulevard, right?
No, Hilliard Road,
This
it
is
goes,
Hilliard Road?
yeah, it goes from Pedal Pushers all the way down.
It says Pogus Bay there.
That's that old road.
This
that
is the
used to
road
go
that goes
through
from
there.
here, from Pedal Pushers, all the
Oh,
way
okay, that's,
through the,
oh, this is
through the
Parade-
low area.
Parade Road?
Correct.
Okay, and this is?
Down to Route 3.
That's the railroad.
Oh,
In red is the railroad.
so is there a road here?
Not really, you can snowmobile through it or
Okay.
motorcycle through it or.
You
full
can
wheel.
imagine you could ride a bicycle along it.
Yeah, it's not really accessible by vehicle.
Okay, so 17 is,
That's Parade Road over there. Okay, now I'm not quite as confused.
Well, at one point, they talked about actually improving that roadway to ease some of the traffic flow around the area, but I guess that's never
I've
gonna
always been a proponent of it, Rusty, and
They
don't
still
you
talk
worry,
about
I beat that drum as hard as I can.
They still talk about it, yeah.
happen.
Don't
There's
you
no money
worry.
for that, to do that, so it's not probably gonna happen. But if it did happen, then that's gonna open up that whole area for, development,
Right.
so.
Nice stream
Unfettered
right through it.
development.
Looks like a lot of streams right in it.
so the, what's the lot 14 used for now, the Korea
It's,
Girls?
it's owned, there's a house on it down on Pogus Bay. And so,
Okay.
In 2006, they filed a CUP to try to put a development in there, but nothing ever happened with it. I think in 2009, they filed a notice of action they never filed their final plans with Belknap County Registry of Deeds, so plans fell through.
Okay, so,
I got a
so you
question.
can look at this right here. This will give you a better idea of
This
it. There's
where you
Pinhole
can-
Cove. That's on there. I'm
Oh,
gonna
yes.
switch these with you,
Yeah.
so you can
Right.
see what it is. See, so this gives you an idea of the
is-
forest there,
this
Yeah.
is all
right? This is
developed.
this big piece
This is
here.
all,
This is Mike Lynn, and this is this
this is
piece right here.
cross-country skiing and
And
snowmobiling.
this will be Korea Sisters here.
Been down in
And
there.
they have one house on it right now.
Okay, got it.
So it's 14, so,
Question for you here.
This.
Looking at the front page of this document,
I don't know, but we
It's
used to
signed.
sample it.
At this point.
August 30th, 2006, and it's a stamp, say a tax stamp at the top of the document of February 22nd, 2012, for $123. What's the difference between those 6 years here?
Never got, the stuff didn't get recorded properly.
That's it? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rusty, your parcel is landlocked,
How do I get to
and it
that?
would be,
I'm just gonna give you this.
it would
right here.
be sort of contiguous with the state forest.
Correct.
And I used to go cross-country skiing on Lannon's property, right? Because that's all undeveloped?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's all woodlands, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used to go in on the state's,
Snowmobile down through the roadway that goes through, from Parade Road down to Hilliard Road. There's a snowmobile trail is, but other than that, I don't, visit the property.
okay. Okay, so, does anybody have any additional questions?
Yeah, if the city acquires it, what's the city gonna do with it? Because it abuts a state forest.
That's horrible.
Huh?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Not gonna do anything with it.
So we just own it?
The way it is.
So it's protected, it keeps it from, allowing two big lots for unfettered development.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lot 14.
it does
It
break
also
up.
gives you a piece of a corridor,
Right.
a
Yep.
thought, on the way out of a
Okay,
state forest if you were, to continue to create some sort of pathway, you know what I mean?
I thought there was a are we gonna put a conservation easement on this? Because I thought there was a minimum requirement of acreage for a conservation easement, am I right on that?
Conservation easement as to, owning it, which would make it difficult for him to put it into current use, as it were.
But if the
Because
city
of the
owns it,
size
it's
of it.
okay?
You gotta have 10
Yep.
acres, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta have 10 acres,
There were
so,
no ordinances that I found regarding size of lot requirement for conservation easement.
no.
Only if you wanna put it under current use for the state. The
So,
one thing we do wanna consider though is we would like to monitor conservation easements or lands. And since the parcel is landlocked, how would that be
You should
done?
be able to
Come into
access
the
through the
forest.
state forest, there's
State
nothing that
forest.
disallows you from walking on state land,
No, there's,
he says optimistically.
there's access to the state forest, there are lots of trails back in there.
Yeah,
So it would be, we could get access that way. So, okay, so I just wanna make sure that I understand, you're gonna donate the land.
Yeah, it's no cost to the city. You know,
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
taking a tax deduction
What is,
for
this is just
my
the
cost
railroad.
of buying
Yes.
the
This
property.
is non-existent road, this
My
is like a
tax
class
return,
six or
but
something.
it's no cost to the city, we just transfer the deed to the city as a conservation, or whatever
just to put it
way it
where
needs to be transferred.
There is no,
Okay,
all of the tax map.
well, I think that's very, very good of you to do this, really.
she can, you can buy state land.
I see your benefits, I see the benefits on our side too.
Link isn't there.
And since it, abuts the state forest, which is already conservation land and stuff.
Right, and it keeps a huge subdivision from happening.
Yeah, it cuts it off in half,
Yeah.
they'd have to buy the property next to them.
What were you gonna do with it
We're getting there.
when you bought it?
I was gonna use it for mitigation for wetlands, but when I bought it back then, the whole regulations is all changed now, and I'm not doing the project anymore, so it's,
Now, you own a budding property,
no,
no?
No,
Okay.
This was just an isolated parcel then?
yeah,
That's
it
fine,
came up,
thank
the
you.
city came up to bid for sale, and I bought it,
Mm-hmm,
and seeing that it was by the state forest,
yeah, perfect,
first, thing it turned into conservation land.
perfect.
there's,
and so once again, reasonably, if we're not if residents aren't restricted from going on the trails in the state forest, then they would reasonably have access to this the same way that
maybe that says road right there.
we would for monitoring it.
Who covers the legal costs of the transfer? There's gotta be some lawyers involved somewhere in this mess.
It would just be a deed transfer with it.
Just,
Thank you.
I don't know.
I think, yeah, I don't
I
think
don't
it
know.
wouldn't be anything
Yeah, I would just.
I don't think it would
Significant.
be, yeah, it wouldn't be onerous, I
would
wouldn't
pay
think.
I would provide a deed to the city. It's like
You know,
it's
this was a quick claim deed to
$200
start
There might
with.
be a filing fee with
Now
the
it's
county,
like,
but
what, $30 or something.
Yeah, it's not,
I mean, it
not
was a quick
significant.
claim
negligible.
to start with, so
And there's never been any nuclear waste dump or other thing on it that we all know of? Come, this question.
No, I just deed it back to the city the way they deeded it to me.
Perfect.
That'll
So they
work.
get
And-
back the same.
And when did you actually take ownership of it?
2006.
long time ago.
I've had it for a while.
Did you ever try to improve it or can get nowhere with it, or, no?
No, I bought it for mitigation
Yeah,
for
you didn't,
wetlands.
you found out that the rules were
Well,
against you.
at that point, they're in the process of changing them. In the project that I was working on, I didn't
Yeah.
continue with. So at that point, it's just sitting there.
Yeah, it's a golden opportunity, I think, for the city.
Okay, any other questions? So what we have to do is, I will talk to Scott Myers and give him the information you've given us, and he may have additional questions. If we do, if he does, we'll get in contact and ask you the questions. We'll get in contact you one way or the other.
I believe this will need to go before a vote in council, city council.
yeah.
Right.
I'm sure.
But
Yeah.
first I have to talk to Scott to see if he has any questions.
Do you have a copy of his initial questions that I had sent you?
I don't have it with me, no.
Okay. I think pretty much all of them were answered, so he just had a couple, I think the only that weren't covered, so we already covered the, is there a size requirement for the land? We said no. How do we monitor, how do we access? We already got that. So the public would be able to access because it's public land.
Do we need a title search?
Previous owner was the city of Laconia. They gave me a quitclaim deed to it. So
Quit claim.
unless they gave me a bad deed, it should be okay.
Possible, quit claim.
So
Never know, Rusty.
the only two things I see here that we haven't already discussed was, would it be better served if it was connected through an adjacent parcel through a lot line adjustment?
You're not going to get a lot line and adjustment to do more. I'm not seeing anything there that you could adjust to.
I don't know about lot line adjustment. I'm sure that Mike knows more about it than I do.
And it better be a public session with the city council,
Yes.
accepting property or whatnot.
That's not our, That's not our purview.
I know.
And then, are you aware of any, other than the fact that there's wetlands on it, any characteristics of significance such as vernal pools, plant life, breeding grounds, et cetera?
and it would be great if there were.
Yeah, unlike other places.
Well, actually, it wasn't to this site, but another site in the area that I was looking at did have a soil scientist and a person that looks for all that stuff. And there are those things in that area that they
Right.
found. So I can't say it's specific to this site right here, but in the area there are that type of, they did a report that was like this thing on another parcel that was in this area that I was looking at purchasing,
Oh.
which I never did. But I had the report done for wetlands and this and that, but there are those type of activities and whatever you call them.
You can see it on these maps here, you can see it laid out. I don't see anything right there, but certainly it's surrounded by it.
That area.
Right.
Yeah, it may be worth running, you can run a report online through NHB, the
Yep.
National Heritage Bureau, and just see if they have anything on file, cause if there's a known endangered species that's been found at some point, it would've been logged.
I'm not exactly
Fun.
sure why we would object to this
Salamanders.
donation of
No,
having
it's-
some,
I'm just saying to
enhance its
if
value.
you want, if
Document
you
it.
would like it and
oh,
support
yeah.
it, it may help to say, well, we also know that there's X, Y, and Z species.
I think though, to Mike's point, is I mean, just looking at this, I'm not looking online, what he's looking at, I mean, there are, this looks like it's more of an upland, I don't know, because this isn't topo.
Right?
But looking at all this other drainage and wetlands, I think there's enough other significant water features, at least in my opinion, it would be beneficial to conserve a parcel like this, just for the other drainage.
See-
Get the picture for you.
Oh, okay.
So where are you, Mike?
So this is right off our tax maps.
Yep.
And this is,
That's okay.
come on, kids. This is this piece right here.
Yep.
Okay, you know, this is the state forest there. This comes out on this road here, that's the access.
It's amazing how much stuff they show on those maps nowadays.
So you can see your wetlands are around it. What you said about it being an upland is correct.
Yeah.
But what I also agree in that separating these two huge parcels can mitigate some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good idea. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rusty.
Good, thank you.
We'll be in touch with you.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of us.
Drive carefully.
Looks like the snow stopped,
I know.
plus the road's still all.
Yeah, up on the hills. It's gonna be tough on the hills.
Okay, so let's get back to the agenda here and the minutes.
Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Guys, I'm gonna pass this, sign-up sheet back around because it doesn't look like you put a check mark next to your preferred
Oh. Yeah,
method of communication.
Oh, I may have failed
I
that
didn't do it
too.
either.
All right.
Or even just circle it if there's, I know the spacing is kind of tight.
There's not much to choose from.
Yeah.
Sir?
Okay, anybody have any comments on the minutes from
Have we heard any more from,
December 11th?
I move we approve the minutes of December 11th, 2019 as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Dean, I'll just add a follow-up. I did send the plans, we had talked about it, to the Winnisquam Watershed Network. I don't know if I should.
And I was on the phone call when, the other night, and we discussed the plans, and the chairman is going to, chairman of the Winnisquam Watershed Network is going to, may send some comments, some suggestions on how we might change things. She does permitting in other states for discharges, water discharges, and she had some comments that we might use to improve the way that we do things. So she may send those, I don't know.
Okay, the
She's-
permit was accepted by DES and approved with conditions.
Right, but it's just like information for us, so, okay. Anyway, thank you for doing that, Lisa. Okay. The budget. Under new business.
Forgot to get one for myself.
First,
So
first I
where
thought
do
that said
I
Weight
find the
Watchers.
budget?
Oh.
Weight Watchers. Better glasses. I need to enlarge this, I guess. There we go.
Okay, so now I've sufficiently goofed this up, so. Okay, great.
So the annual fees include like our
New Hampshire
membership
Lakes,
with New Hampshire Lakes and
LWA.
Winnipesaukee. Probably the New Hampshire Conservation Commission, do we have a fee for that? Yeah, membership fee. Look at him, he can walk. Nope, almost.
I got him on the wrong page. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I could have helped you, you didn't have to walk all the way over there.
What?
I would've helped you, it's,
Okay.
I double as tech support.
We know that.
Yeah, well,
Should've
when we were
crawled
kids,
up.
we didn't have these things.
you should've crawled up to her and begged for mercy, please show me how.
What's OS?
Okay, so how do I get, so how do I get to,
When you click the link, click view.
Yeah, kick it,
You have to
oh, quick
view.
view, okay,
There's
not down.
no-
even
There's
make
no
it bigger
line.
for you to touch it.
So it's okay.
Where's there?
Oh, you can touch that.
There's no
Crazy.
expense in
Oh,
OS.
no, that's a, I don't know. It comes up as a number. Doesn't give me anything.
Doesn't give you anything.
No, it says send message, add to context. I don't think so.
No,
Don't touch it.
OS. No money.
What is OS then, Ashley?
You can make it
Under
bigger.
I'm
missile,
actually not sure. I'll check
What?
with Dean.
right, and we only see it in, 15, 16.
Yeah.
Wait a
So
minute,
it's-
what was your question, Mike?
This, next to the, last entry above annual fees
OS?
is this OS, and we see it in 15, 16, and it hasn't been budgeted since. And we were curious as to what it was. I tried to hit a link there, but it didn't tell me what it was. But we haven't seen it for a while. I didn't know if you guys might remember what that was.
I'll look into it and I'll let you know.
Excuse me.
It says O&M total down the bottom. O&M, operation and maintenance maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Management?
Operation and management? So.
It could be management, because that's off to the right, but then it's got council, so.
So the question I asked was, if we don't use all of a particular line item, can the money from that line item be moved to another line item? And secondly, if we don't use the whole $4,500 this year, does the remaining balance at the end of the year get rolled over to next year?
So the budget is approved year to year. I don't think it's necessarily a rollover, but it's.
Well, in the past, we've had things roll over.
We have,
Yeah,
yes, we
and
have.
you can move money between different topics.
But I think it has to be approved by the
If it's over a
city
certain
manager?
amount, and I was talking to Rob about that, if it's over a certain amount, we would need to get higher
Approval.
up approval.
Because I feel like we did
before
that
that's
before, we
done.
had to get,
But if it's nothing too big, then we can do that internally and work with Dean to just move it, cause it's all contained within Conservation Commission's expenses and their budget for the year.
This is city council granted money in the city council
Yeah,
budget
this is what's approved in the yearly budget,
for us.
yes.
In addition to whatever couple of dollars we have in our own account, right?
This is the account.
That is your turn.
Now,
That's everything?
There's no money left over from previous years. So we get $4,500 for this year. And at the end of the year, whatever we don't spend,
Okay, I'm talking about the money that we had to buy the some lots.
That was in a fund that was
Did we deplete
created,
it?
a good amount of it.
So there must be some money left in the fund. I think I talked about that several
So the
months
way,
ago.
the way that fund would be filled is if someone had a big piece of land
Right, yeah.
and they carved it all up and were able to break it
But
out
I
of
think there
current
was like a
use.
couple, $300 left after we purchased some land.
Right.
So is that included in the 4,500
No.
or?
No.
So we got more than 4,500 then?
Well, okay, so we have two funds.
Accounts.
We have this one for $4,500.
That's
And
granted
that's,
by the city,
and that's
a yearly
from
thing.
from the city. Then we have what Mike was talking about,
Yeah.
which is, current use monies.
Right.
When somebody takes property out
I
of
got
current
that.
use, 50% goes to the city, and 50% goes into our budget, or into our account, until we max out at $250,000.
Right, which we used most of it,
Yes,
but there should have been some left over somewhere.
there is some left over, and it's not
Not included in this.
itemized in this.
Okay, this
portion.
is a yearly thing.
And
Right.
so in that, this doesn't reflect anything out of that other account, the
No.
conservation monies, because it doesn't show the deduction here for acquisition.
Right,
So there is some other monies, and my understanding is that the $4,500 and this other account monies can't be moved from one account to the other.
got it.
There-
This is just operating money.
This is it.
But is there a rollover?
My understanding is that it's approved on a year-to-year basis, so
What doesn't
it's
get
not
spent goes
just
to the
because you
general
didn't
fund.
use all of it the year before, doesn't mean that that extra money is gonna be,
That's right,
yeah.
okay.
I apologize, what is it fiscal year or calendar year? Because I'm looking at the dates here, it looks like it's a fiscal year.
It is fiscal year, so July. It was approved, I believe, last
I
July.
couldn't remember, thank
So
you.
this is last July's approval.
When I asked Rob, that's what he had said, was that it's
So-
July.
Come this coming July, there'll be a new budget. Am I right?
Yeah, it would be for next year, 21 to 22.
Wait a minute.
'Cause we're in
If it's a
2020.
fiscal year, that's July to July.
Right,
So.
we're in
and-
2020, and the 2020 to 2021 budget has already been approved.
Okay.
So in this coming July, it would be 2021 to 2022.
Oh.
Okay, so they're like 6 months ahead here in the
So,
budget.
well, wait a minute, if that's right, we don't have an actual, we should have already had an actual for the past, what ended. But we don't, we had 1920 budget showing, but no actual. You see what I'm saying?
Like what we actually used? Is that what you
Right.
mean?
Because we're in the middle of 1920 now, so we haven't finished it up and we won't know until
July.
July.
Right, so that's why I was saying, I
Yeah.
just got confused
Right.
with what she said, that I thought she'd skipped ahead a year, but maybe I was wrong.
And then so it's reflected if you move over a little bit on the grid, then they
Yes,
approve the
yes, thank you.
same idea.
So do we have an actual of what we spent somewhere of the previous 4,500? Like the 19 to 20? Do we know?
You're in the middle of
Actuals.
1920 right now.
Yeah.
So you're
That-
asking what we've spent year-to-date?
So
So-
1819 is an actual.
Yeah, okay, I got it. So we got 4,500 in 19 to 20.
That's what we're chewing on now.
We're chewing on it.
And I do get end of the month expense reports, so if you wanna know, I don't have the latest number in my head as far as what we've spent and what's left, but I can.
That would be worth having, I think, so we know where we stand, month to
I'll
month.
send that out.
And as we look at, further down in the list, our event ideas, if we need to spend any money prior to the end of the fiscal year to support our events, we might want to do that.
Yeah, we need to know what we got.
Right?
Yeah.
All valid points.
Who made this up?
I know, I was gonna ask that, who sets the amount, like, who decided $100 postage and that kind
I
of thing?
believe Dean helps establish a budget and then that's approved.
Dean Anson?
No.
Dean Trefethan,
Trefethan.
thank you.
Not guilty.
We got a big jump in supplies here, from $28 to $400. Are we anticipating something, or have we spent 300 of that already?
Did we buy new meters? Did we buy a new meter? Was that part of it?
We didn't, we recalibrated them, like, as I was coming into my position.
Buffering
bought-
solution and all that.
We bought that water sampler.
right? And we bought the GPS unit also.
And the sampling's not cheap, I got the, payment back from UNH for it was just, I believe, 2 months' worth of the water sampling, and that was almost around $200, so.
So would that fall under miscellaneous?
The 700.
I feel like we should have a line item for it.
But it seems to me that periodically, we ought to have an update of what we have, what we spent, and how much is left. So we know where we stand, and so if we want to do something that's gonna cost $500 and we got 200 in the account, we can't do it.
No, we can move money from one account
I
to another.
understand that.
But,
But it's not, suppose we
Yeah, it's
wanna
good to
put more
know.
money in the weed watchers, for instance, then what are you gonna take it out of? Training, or not much to take that out of. All I'm saying is, an accounting of what we spent and what we have.
Mhm.
We keep
Would be
all of
worth
that on
having.
file, but do you wanna have that as something
Every
that you
meeting.
talk every single meeting, or is it more of like,
Quarterly?
hey, we wanna do this, do we have the funding, and then I check the latest numbers
Well, I
and then
think,
we go into that.
monthly maybe, but, and then if we come up with something that we need to do, we'd have to go and ask, what do we got? An immediate update. In between, this
She can
report
almost
and
do
this
that sitting
report.
right there.
Huh?
She can almost do that sitting
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
It's early,
I just have to sign in.
it's before
the computer.
7.
Howdy.
I have access to it.
I made it.
You got your water bottle back?
I got my water bottle.
Okay.
This is a different one.
Oh, is it? Okay, so if,
Phone
I mean,
numbers.
I don't necessarily, you know what, why don't you do this? Why don't you just tell us how much we spent?
So
When,
far
when
this
we
year.
spend money, tell us how much we spent and out of which account and what the balance is.
Yeah,
Just-
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Right, just so that,
Yep.
I think Dick makes a good point, and I think, if we had that information, then we
We
can,
just record it in the minutes, and that's right there.
right.
I mean, it's open door. Anybody wants a question, our accounts, they all just look at the minutes.
You're talking like larger expenses, not every time I copy something, right?
No.
Oh,
That
I
means
want the
every
copy
meeting you're gonna
machine
see-
count.
All right,
Accountability.
$2.50
25 cents a
copying
copy.
materials.
But yeah, but I would like to know what, where the money came for the testing. Like what,
Okay.
what line
Yeah.
it's coming out of.
Okay, cause I know they charge
Yeah, is that out of weed
code, I just
watchers?
don't know which individual small piece it breaks down to, so.
No, because I think the weed watcher money went right to Winnisquam, didn't it?
Right, to Winnisquam, yeah,
Right.
but I think that it's a good point that, the weed watcher is kind of a discretionary. When we go and we sample and we send samples to the lab, we have to pay that amount. So if we don't have enough money to pay for laboratory analysis, then we can't be sending samples to the lab unless we move it from a different line item.
So I have a question. Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Milfoil?
Milfoil is a separate line item in the city budget. And it's 3 separate line items, actually. One is for for Paugus Bay, one is for Opeechee, and the other is for Winnisquam.
Thank you.
and last time I talked to the city manager, the city council is committed to dealing with milfoil.
So yes, Ashley, if we could have a breakdown of those expenses for the testing, because that way we can also plan ahead and look at our testing for this upcoming season and decide, maybe we don't want to do it every other week or depending on how much it's gonna cost. We'll be able to project a little better.
Yeah, I'll do that and I'll pull the, December, end of the month expense report.
Thank you.
So Ashley, I don't see where the laboratory analysis would be under these line items,
That's
except,
what Deb was mentioning.
yeah, I think
She's
that,
gonna check that out. Maybe it might have been miscellaneous.
I think it's miscellaneous and it's,
I think it should have its own line.
I think it should not be called miscellaneous. It's because we're making a commitment to of those funds, not
Didn't help me.
not like, well, I got a couple of bucks in my pocket, I think I'll go buy a donut, you know?
Oops.
And then, is this $4,500 for 2021 already approved? Or is this being submitted to the city council for approval?
I believe that this was approved in July.
Okay,
Wait a minute.
okay.
The 2021.
Oh, wait, no,
No, no,
no,
couldn't
then,
have
no, sorry.
But I think,
It's not approved yet.
Okay, but if
I
we
think
knew,
it's in the works, because I think,
Right.
didn't Dean last time say that
He would need it.
because I forget what we were
That's
talking
gonna be
about,
the
but we were talking
budget
about
starting
spending
in
some money, and
July
he said that would have to
of
go
this
in
year.
for the, RF, what do you call it?
But we're still
The
working on the
inventory.
19, the 20.
The wildlife
We're
inventory.
halfway through.
oh, right.
Remember?
Yeah, I believe Dean Sherpathon said he was going to propose a new budget, like, shortly, just to get the ball rolling.
Right, this one was already set.
Right.
Okay, then, if you could get together the cost that we've paid for the laboratory, and it would probably be 15, 16, 16, 17, and after that, they're all zeros, except in 18, 19. Did we do sampling in 18, 19 last year?
That may have been our off year.
Yeah,
I don't think we did anything since 16, 17, in which case, we don't, lab
maybe
fees
that's
have
what
changed.
the OS was.
If you could just find out how much, okay, so you've already know how much they charged last year for laboratory analysis.
Yeah, just for the two, we went out twice. I think we took about 8 samples, and each time, so 16 samples.
Okay,
So I'll get the cost breakdown of what the charges were,
right, and,
so we can kind of see what the yearly budget would be,
Good,
how much
and-
that's gonna cost and where that would come out of.
great. And then we haven't done anything with the tributaries, so that's gonna be an additional charge. So I think we need to get that together so that we can go to Dean and tell him if we need additional monies to cover laboratory analysis.
And we don't see Conservation Commission in front of CIP like a lot, and I don't know that boards go before them, mostly departments do.
Right.
But they don't lobby for any monies from the city budget. You never see it like that.
I see 2 empty columns here. The green one is department. That's what Dean and you guys proposed. Is that correct? The green.
Correct?
And then the manager's gotta look at this thing
Right?
and adjust what he thinks. Then the council's gotta go through it,
Absolutely.
and that will be the final.
Right.
So we may or may not have 4,500 at this point for the upcoming year.
It, on this left-hand side here, where these numbers are in blue before postage, printing, copier,
Yeah.
supplies, there's no link when you
No,
hit
it doesn't
that.
do
It
anything.
only makes pretend it's a phone number. But even there, if you could hit it, and it would give you in
Break it down.
a column there, your current, what Dick is looking for. And it could be
Yeah, I
just in
think it
a,
accidentally hyperlinked it because it's an Excel spreadsheet, so sometimes the formatting gets weird. It's
Yep.
not supposed to go to another document.
all right, just, if
It's
it
not-
were,
It's not a hyperlink.
all right.
It's a phone number,
It's a
so you
fake.
wanna
Yeah,
call
it
this guy.
thinks it's,
Oh, I just pressed all
Yeah,
those
it's
buttons,
not-
we're done now.
it's a formatting.
International phone numbers.
Got a couple people on the line?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the budget?
So this is just a proposed budget, we have not seen it yet. We may not get it, we may get more, depending on how the council finally comes up with it.
But it's your chance to input
Yeah,
with what we've given Ashley here, she
maybe we
can
should-
give us some more next week.
if
We'll
we
know
have
where
more
we are.
information on this, we could input stuff and move things around if we wanted to.
Can we find out when this 2021 proposed budget will be acted on?
It's gotta be before July,
Right. I think they're working on them now,
yeah.
but it would be good for us to.
Yeah, they're probably asking the
Our
department
act
heads for
together.
their budgets at this point.
Correct.
That
Don't you
was-
know? Don't you know that, Mike?
Yeah, that was actually back in November.
Oh, it was?
Yep.
I missed that.
Yep, that's when you look at that's CIP. And that's where the department heads come in and
Yeah,
they set up what they're looking for the next year.
Okay, anything else on the budget?
no?
Thank you for having that.
Okay, next item is the NRI, Natural Resource Inventory Update. So Ashley, you want to tell us what you did here, please?
So this, once you click the link, it'll pull up a list. I searched and pulled the reports for the different abutting towns, so for Belmont, Guilford, Meredith, Samberton, and there's links under each of those that go to their reports, and then I have just who the report was prepared by. I know we talked before about whether or not phase 1 or phase 2 and what that distinction was. The only town I saw that did that was in Meredith with Rick Vanderpool. Seemed to be the only person who did that and had a distinction between a phase 1 and phase 2, and there is a description in there of the difference between those two. One thing I did notice is, so ours was done in 2009. It's not the oldest,
Right.
but it's not the newest. So just something to think
not bad,
about.
right.
And I did look into trying to find something as far as how often these should be updated. I think our best bet would probably be talking directly to some of these contractors as far as what they recommend, but I couldn't find any unified answer of, yeah, you should have this updated every year, 5 years, 10 years. And that's about it.
So our cost was $10,000?
Yes, just about.
When they do this business, do they go on to private property and all that throughout the city?
They have to request access on the private property. They can't just trespass to do the
Just
report,
wonder
but
what-
yeah.
If they get permission and, what
They-
percentage of permission
They
and,
use, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, you go ahead.
Well, all I was gonna say was, my understanding is, I mean, they use a kind of a lot of different resources, the either existing maps, photos. I know with the soils maps, they use the NRCS soils maps. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, and they may target certain parcels if they don't feel they don't have a lot of information, or if it's of high interest to the city. I mean, you can kind of hire, as Ashley was pointing out, you can kind of hire them at any level for, how in-depth do you want your NRI? So, that's all I had, Mike. I don't know if you had something else.
Just saying, this is fascinating, actually, I remember having this in a bound copy
Yeah,
from when it was done.
yeah.
And the information here is great, this really, I don't know how much traffic you get off the City of Laconia website or their links, but when someone's talking about why you would want to protect, wetlands like the wetlands up on Hilliard Road, then certainly this would be something they'd want to look at.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
they could learn real easy without the prejudging, you know? They'd understand why it's important to save places like Pickle Pond or other low areas that filter our water.
This is on our website, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Just an editing note, I don't know if this is in the computer or not. There's an N in Sanbornton.
Oh,
I think it's probably something where you type it, it just automatically fills it in for you, and it may be a mistake in that, but.
It says only 5 days of field work were conducted.
It's probably all I needed.
It's under field work here.
In 2019,
Yeah, what I'm looking
2009.
at.
nine, I mean,
Nine.
yeah, thank you.
And the rest of it was like sitting in the office with a computer.
Not
So,
all of it. These pictures, you know, even
Yeah,
Dean Anson might be responsible for some of these pictures.
yeah.
did you send this to us electronically, so that I can, at my computer, click
Yes.
these links? You did?
Well, I sent
Oh,
the
maybe not.
agenda, and the agenda has a
Yeah.
link.
Okay, I
Right.
just didn't,
Yeah.
thank you, I didn't
I don't
see
think
that.
I individually
That's right.
sent this
Yeah.
out. This is just something I pulled together.
I appreciate that. I wanted to download these and put them into a
Yeah.
file on my computer.
Yeah, you should be able to get back
Yep.
to it pretty easily.
Thanks.
Nice picture of Pickerel Pond in here.
Right? Before drones. Actually had to be in an aircraft.
Yeah,
So the reason we wanted to do this is so that we could prepare for when we needed to do an update, how much it might cost, so that we didn't go to city council and say, we need $20,000 in 6 months to update the NRI.
So
And I think that the work that was done for ours was not the same level of, it's not the same scientific level as what Rick Vanderpool does. I think he's probably the guru. And what I would be willing to do is call Meredith and ask them, get some information about their NRI and see what they have to say about Rick. I mean, I've been out in the field with Rick, and he's extremely knowledgeable.
So, if I could, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So, two things. I guess, not necessarily in the right order here, but, so I think what we also discussed was sending out, I've forgotten what they call them, an RF something, a request for quotes or whatever, from everybody, so that we know what our costs might be. But also, I'm interested if Meredith is the only one that did something to the phase 2 that Ashley could discern, calling these other towns and finding out why they chose the level they did. Was it purely economics, or was there, well, we only wanted to know roughly this, we didn't really care about how in-depth we were on this information, so that's why we chose that. I mean, it might have just been financial, and that's what they had to spend, and that's what they did, but because I think one of the things we had talked about was the interest in being able to compare apples to apples when we're looking at potentially parcel conservation, or something that the Lakes Region Planning Commission may put out in terms of development or transportation or whatever. I thought we wanted to be able to look at these NRIs and say that, to be able to match them up when we're talking about borders. So, again, my two things is finding out about why the other towns, or why they
That's 10 years.
did them to the level that they did,
interesting.
and what their reasoning was, and
Yeah.
then putting out that request for quotes, just so that we know.
Could somebody just clarify for me, like phase one and phase two?
Well, that's what we were,
Okay, so phase one, according to Rick Van Poel, phase one is identifying high-value co-occurrence areas. So that would be, my understanding, looking at different levels of information that are on, like on Granite, the Granite website. And so you put them to, one over the other and saying, oh, yeah, well, there's these types of soils or whatever. And so that would be,
That's
that would be
phase-
the first, and then
that's phase two.
that would be phase one. Phase two would go out into the field and look at stuff. And
He's saying it
then
backwards, but yeah.
three would be to do a more in-depth field delineation using a GPS. And they probably GPS and drones now. And they were specifically, in Meredith, it looks like they were specifically looking for prime wetland areas. We don't have any prime wetlands. We don't have any designated prime wetlands in Laconia.
But if we were looking at conservation that maybe abutted the two lands and it was near a prime wetland in Meredith, that might elevate the reason to conserve something in Laconia
Or Guilford, yeah.
or Guilford or any other town. I'm just saying that's my,
Right, and I think that's right, and the example I could think of is Pickerel Pond. So, and I think that these designations of phase one, two, and three, I think, that's kind of consistent with other environmental site assessments for different purposes, like purchasing and what's types of contaminants and things like that, so.
I'm more familiar with them with the stream, the geomorphology studies. They also do them to phase one, phase two, and that level
Oops.
helps to inform you and also apply for funding for different projects. If you've
Okay.
only done an assessment to phase one, they may ask you to go out and have something done to phase two, because it might inform you about what's going to happen if you do the project, what may happen in other parts of that watershed or something.
Okay, thank you.
I think if I just could suggest one thing is, you do wanna think about why you wanna get an updated NRI, what you're gonna do with the information. 'Cause
Otherwise,
I did see, yeah, because what good is the information if it's gonna be sitting there? Sometimes I get these GIS articles, and there was an interesting one in here just talking about, I know they did extensive mapping, but creating a layer based off of the information that prioritizes and identifies high priority and low priority areas for conservation, so that you could proactively approach a property owner and say, hey, we've identified your land as being a high priority resource area, would you be interested in a conservation easement? Here's what they typically look like. More so taking a proactive approach than waiting for a property owner to say, hey, I feel my land is super valuable and I wanna protect it, what can I do about it? Just something,
So do you feel that the current NRI, aside from a parcel like Pickerel Pond, doesn't help guide us to that?
as I mentioned, I couldn't find anything that said how often this information needs to be updated to have relevancy.
I think it
I mean, I
depends
would
too
think-
on whatever city or town,
Oh,
how
the-
much they're
Yeah.
What's the
and I-
pressure?
holding, yeah.
What's the
And I
pressure?
know for site plans and everything, if your wetland information isn't within a year or two,
Yeah.
you really should get it updated, but this is looking at the city as a whole, so I don't know how frequent these really need, and maybe it would take talking to some of these people, consultants that do this. Granted, they might say, oh, every year, because that helps me make
Yeah.
money.
Of course.
But, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know if the information we have now could just be used to do something like that and take what we have and just go one step further and see if that's relevant, or if we really do need to get it updated.
What do you think would have changed, anybody? Are there any really significant changes in the past 11 years?
Some of it's been stuff that we've been able to protect, for instance, Pickerel Pond, you know, and access in there. So you'd see, you know, one of the things that you might pull out are how many of these that were reflected in this 2009 has actively been protected, or has there been degradation because of development?
I think with rain events too, stormwater runoff may have changed in different places. But mainly if if someone's building or if there's new developments and that kind of thing, changes
I'm sorry.
topography, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to step on your foot. I think too, when we were doing this, and I could be wrong, but weren't we like anticipating the master planning process?
Correct.
And unfortunately, it didn't necessarily
Get
mesh the
included.
way we thought it would, but.
And I believe they made it a federal requirement to get NRIs, that everyone should have some sort of inventory of their land,
But they didn't put a time frame on it,
right?
yeah.
I think the other thing is that, given the state school property, the city's desire to build in the northwestern portion of the city, that if we had an NRI that better defined specific areas that should be preserved, not, for instance, and this is, you know, putting in Hilliard Road, and then putting drainage and water and sewer in Hilliard Road, what is that going to do to that portion of the undeveloped city?
Build-out analysis. they're talking about.
So it would be, if you do this, you're going to be and I'm not saying this is the case, I'm using this as an example. You will be interrupting wetland areas that are, you know, important to whatever. So if, you know, if we were to look at the NRI to help the city decide where development should take place, where it should not take place.
But at the same time, I don't believe we have jurisdiction to say you can't. I think.
No, that's right.
It was
Right,
just, yeah.
They have build-out analysis that will just
Right.
show you, envision, here's a vision of what could happen, or what might happen, you know. Dina, is the Lakes Region Planning Commission getting in on any of this kind of overview?
Not that I'm aware of. I think there've been a couple of, we have the work that was done by Irwin Marine, where they impacted a portion of Black Brook. And so there's some, and we had the geomorphological investigation of Black Brook that's been done after this. So that's a major study that was done that was not included in this NRI. And the state school property was not an active item on anybody's agenda at that time. So, you know, maybe that kind of information, an updated NRI would help decide how we treated the state school property.
Or parcels around it?
Parcels around it, or,
Are you, I'm sensing a concern from you, and I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. My thing is that I'm just looking at it from a planning perspective, and just because you know it's important and has high ecological value doesn't mean you can necessarily stop someone from building when all of the ordinances allow you to do so. So I'm not saying, I think it's good to know it, and it's good when they come before Conservation Commission to say, okay, here's your proposal, and here is what we suggest for your application, and as you make your way to planning board. But ultimately, you can't say no.
Unless we get the ordinance changed based on the information that comes from the NRI showing that it's of
Right,
importance.
so preservation of different areas and identifying those areas would definitely be a priority for an updated NRI.
Right, and, you know, the next step might be to go to somebody like Rick Vanderpool or some other consultant and say, you know, this is what the city has been doing. This is what is going on in the city. This is what's happened since we did our NRI. This is the information we have available. We didn't then. These are some of the areas where there might be development taking place. Could you give us some input as to whether we should update our NRI or a portion of it, or how many years should we let go? 20 years go by before we update it, or 15? You know, so it, you know, I'm just sitting here saying, you know, we got an NRI that I don't know if anybody uses it.
So, next steps, I'm just thinking to progress this. Would you wanna have a meeting with Rick? Or have him? The thing is, with an expense this large, it's going to need to go out to bid. So just
Sure.
because we are talking to him about it, it's not a guarantee that he's going to win the bidding process if it ultimately goes out to bid.
Right, right. I think what I would like to know is how frequently other municipalities upgrade theirs or
Can-
update them.
We might also, if I could, Mr. Chairman, your first call might be to Barbara Richter at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, and just see if she has any background information on this, and see if some of those questions might be answered. Barb, you've probably met her. She's the executive director of the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. She'll probably have some very basic information on NRIs and maybe some input on how frequently they're done, or, you know, some guidance towards that. My one concern about is asking somebody who we might potentially end up hiring. I don't know if that's gonna get, I know Rick is very, very good, and I don't know. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. I would call him up and ask him questions, but I also, on a project we was kind of like, well, we're calling the same person we're gonna ask to bid for the project for getting baseline information, so.
Well, a posting would go out and it'd be public notice that.
Right,
But
for
I
the
agree,
bids,
yeah.
but for the bids, it's
Yeah.
almost like, I don't know, but then the other thing, just to make you aware, I think I already told you this, but, the company that did both Laconia's NRI and Belmont's NRI is no longer in business, and I believe, right, and I had tracked down Elsie Lawson at one point, but she's not even doing this work anymore. So, what information you have, if you have the electronic files, great. If you don't, I don't know that you're gonna be able to get them from them at this point. Because I had mentioned that to Ethan, who was here before? Evan.
Yeah, I have some things on file from them. I mean, I have, obviously, I
Yeah.
have the final report, and I have hard copies as well. But I did notice that they were out of business, especially when I was hunting down
Yeah.
old invoices from them. I was trying to get a hold of them and put together the missing puzzle pieces, and then realized that, yeah, they were no longer in business.
Yep.
Fortunately.
If we were to actually do an NRI again, when is the most logical time we could get it done? It's gotta get into the city budget and the whole bloody works. And they're already working on
Yeah, it
next year's
wouldn't-
budget.
Yeah,
So how far out are we?
Dean already said it wouldn't be till,
Hmm?
Dean already said it wouldn't be till 21, 22. Is that the next one?
Yeah, well, yeah, when he was sitting here, we talked about the last meeting.
Yeah.
Dean Trefethan was here, I don't know if you were here, he was not advising us it was gonna be anytime real soon.
Right.
So that would have, was it about 10 grand, something like that? And,
It might be much more, depending on what we want.
10
Yeah.
years later, and then, once again, what is it you want, and how are you going to utilize it? you know, I look at that, that's not terrible. You know, there's a lot of good information and shows stuff. At least when I look at the pickle pond, I go check, oh, you know, good thing for us.
And what we have might be usable.
Right.
Who knows? I understand. A lot of things do change in a decade, but
Well,
we'll see.
For me, if I could, I'm sorry. For me, just knowing that the city, at least the current, well, the previous city council was so pro-development and didn't incorporate much of what the suggestions were for conservation. They were stripped out because they are pro-development. I just would like to have a more current base of information to then say, okay, you know, I think some of these things that might have been, me personally as a taxpayer, some of the things that got stripped out, I think got stripped out a little prematurely, and maybe we need to revisit some of these. I'm not saying everything. That's, me as a taxpayer, not as the Conservation Commission person, so.
You know, it might not hurt to send a letter to the council saying that we are now exploring, as a commission, now exploring, updating the NRI, and there's gonna be anticipated costs, we can guess at them if we have to, and it would be in such and such a year budget probably. Put them on notice that we just don't wanna shock them with it, with the year that we want it. I don't see why we couldn't.
yeah, I would hesitate to just give them a guess as to how much it would cost or
Okay.
when we would want to do it. And, you know, I just looked at, you know, Meredith had theirs updated in 2007. We had 2009, Guilford's 2011, Belmont's 2007. So, you know, we're in the ballpark. We're in the ballpark. Everybody's in the kind of the same ballpark. And, you know, it might be interesting to know, you know, I think the most of those four municipalities, I think the one that is the most environmentally sensitive, maybe that's not the right word, but anyway, concerned, is Meredith. And you know, I could call and talk to John Edgar and ask him what their thinking is, you know, how much it costs to have your NRI, the 3 phases of your NRI done by Rick Vanderpool. And, you know, maybe we don't even have to have all 3 phases done. Maybe we only have to have the 3rd phase, perform a GPS-based field delineation of all prime wetlands, but maybe we take out the prime wetlands and field delineation of environmentally sensitive lands.
Just one quick note is, you reference phase 3, but I think you're actually thinking that's phase 3, but really it's phase 1, step 3.
Yeah.
So he says the purpose of phase 2 was step 1, purpose of phase 1 is number 2 and 3.
Okay, all right.
So yeah,
I'm
there's
right
2
around.
phases, but I get what you're saying.
But,
Yeah.
you know, it may
Maybe
be,
we're on
so,
phase
you know,
2.
we could look at this and we could say, you know what? We have a you know, a lady here who is very, you know, computer savvy, and she could do a lot of this, and we wouldn't have to pay, but then it would have to be, you know, Dean would have to allocate a block of your time to do it. So, I don't know. My initial purpose in doing this was so that we had a handle on how much it would cost, so that we don't go to the city council and say, oh, by the way, next year, we need $50,000 to
That's my
update our
point right
NRI.
there.
Because they would be like, oh, that's really nice. Come back in 3 years. We can't
At the same
afford it.
time, you don't wanna give them some crazy guessing
Yeah, I don't wanna
range.
give them,
wanna
you know,
have it narrowed down.
Right.
They can look it up, find out how much it previously cost if they really want to.
Sure. I mean, I would tell them, so that, but anyway, so I think this horse is dead.
I mean, just on the wetlands, how much has the wetlands actually changed between then and now?
Well, I think one of the major changes was, remember, Mike, we went and we looked at the wetland that used to be connected to your pond overflowed and went down toward Hilliard Road, and there was a beaver dam there, and the beaver dam got blown out. No more wetland. The same thing happened over on Langley Brook. Beaver dam there got blown out.
And in that, you know, to be truthful, and you are striking my soul, I've been reading this nice book called Eager, and it's a history of the beaver in the development of America. And it speaks to how our wetlands, our floodplains have changed so much because of the removal of beaver dams and channeling of the riverine areas. So, as a keystone species, the beaver creates more habitat living in the valleys. Unfortunately, with development, people want to see smooth edges, no willows, and fast streams. But what it does is it drops the water table so that the floodplains aren't able to do what they're designed to do, which is maintain water, hold the water, filter the water, and give us our the water we love so much.
What's the name of that book?
It's called Eager,
How would you spell it?
E-A-G-E-R, like eager beaver. And I'm sorry I don't have the author's name.
And there
No,
is,
the PBS
there
special,
is
I watched
a,
that.
we had the
I'd like to read that.
Very
board
good.
meeting for the Winnipesaukee Watershed Network, and over on that brook, Black Brook in Samberton, there is a beaver there that's causing them problems, building dams and cutting down trees. And so they go in and they tear out the dams, and the beaver rebuilds the dams, they tear out the dams, so it's like,
I would recommend this book. I was able to find it on sale at a local bookstore up in Meredith,
It's probably used on Amazon too, I'll
or
bet.
whatever. It's a good read, and it definitely speaks to what this
okay.
board
I would
is.
say, just quickly too, Dick, I think the other, Dean brings up Black Brook, and that's another thing, why, I mean, it's not in our town, but why to do an NRI again? So much development has happened upstream of Black Brook, and the sedimentation it's become also quite an issue. Those kinds of things become
Talking
evident.
about Black Brook and Guilford,
No,
Samberton?
Samberton, Meredith, yeah.
Yeah.
That so much has happened upstream of it, and the sedimentation, and that all plays into drainage, and what gets blocked, and there's quite a bit of sensitive, I believe, my personal opinion, quite a bit of sensitive area up there as well environmentally, and how it all gets linked into each other. So that's just my opinion, another reason why to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to say that.
Okay, all right, so, anybody object to moving on?
Just one point here. Each town is doing its own NRI. And towns border each other. I wonder if they could get together, put money into a pot and do a regional NRI. Because we all interact with each other as towns. Samberton, Laconia, Guilford, Meredith, Belmont, we're all Lakes Region towns. I don't know, that's just a thought.
I think that's an excellent idea. And then maybe we can apply for a grant to
Yeah.
do the whole thing.
There you go.
That'd be nice.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Dick. You had the last word. Okay. So, we don't have any applications, right?
No applications.
Okay, so we have old business. Even tied as dock.
We gotta get out of here.
Event ideas.
Oh,
Is it like-
accent on the wrong syllable.
Get me
So
out
I
of
still,
here.
I heard back from, Deb gave me her choices, Wes didn't have any choices, and I still haven't had any, choices back from others, so I don't know if you guys
let's
Wanna
just,
again postpone this?
no, let's
until-
just do it right now.
Okay.
Right now, we just go right to the list. Okay, how many people think World Wetland Day is, which is,
It's too soon. We don't have enough time to react.
Wait,
Okay.
do you have my picks there? I can't remember.
It's Groundhog Day.
I don't have them on me
Okay.
right now, sorry.
All right, that's
I
all
do
right.
have them saved.
okay, anybody want to vote for World Wetlands Day?
To
It's,
do what?
February 2nd.
What would we
As
do?
being
Something we'd be interested in.
something we're interested in.
Well, Groundhog's gonna take over most of the publicity on that day. Really, February 2nd.
But isn't that a North American activity? Anyway, okay.
Are we going like multinational with our event?
Who knows? Who knows? You gotta start somewhere. Okay, no World Wetland Day interest? What about World Wildlife Day?
Cannot browse this page, restricted.
I mean, I would nominate Arbor Day. How do people feel about that?
I agree on Arbor Day.
I would go with World Water Day.
Well, here's a choice, though. We've got World Water Day, or we also
Well,
have.
wait, let's go down the list, let's go right down the list here. So, World Wildlife Day, anybody wanna vote for that?
There's so much.
I should've took the turtle day off.
No, I'm for it. I'm going right there. I'm going
What
to
about-
toss up
Goal line.
Okay.
a turtle, cause
Solar Appreciation Day.
When we vote, what are we voting on to do?
Well, we're thinking about an event each quarter of the calendar
Okay.
year.
One event each quarter to start with, and if
Okay.
you wanna do more, then we can
Take us
discuss
through
that,
the end of
but-
And it
March.
could be,
So the-
Dick,
right.
it could be anywhere from, putting out a pamphlet about something to having an event.
Or writing an article for the paper.
So the first quarter is January, February, March.
Right, so down through the end of March, so I hear in that first quarter, I heard World Water Day.
Okay, I'll go
Sounds
with
good.
World Water Day too, if we're doing it by
I'll go with
quarters.
that too.
I like it.
Boys?
Wait a minute.
it sounds good to me. I'm still stuck on Turtle Day.
We're not there yet.
Just be
Second
patient, Mike,
quarter.
be patient. They're still hibernating. Okay, what about Arbor Day? I think Arbor Day.
I like
That's a
Arbor
good
Day.
And where's that on?
I like Earth Day.
I like Earth Day too.
Those are the big ones right there.
I-
You wanna do all three of those?
What do you mean, all
Or
three of them?
World Water Day, Arbor Day, and Earth Day are all within a month of each other.
No,
No, not World Water Day. Did we say
So
World
I
Water
like
Day?
Arbor Day because there's an easy way to get people to interact
tree.
with the environment. All they have to do is plant a tree. So that's a pretty easy buy-in for us, like maybe we have some seedlings somewhere that we give out and maybe even at the schools and then they can take it home and plant it in their backyard if they have one.
Right.
Real easy, low barrier
No,
to entry.
eat the
That's
site.
what
Okay.
kind of what I was
You just wanna
suggesting.
Do that over World Water Day, right? No. Arbor Day?
Okay, anybody want to vote for World Water Day?
I mean, if we have to have one in the third quarter or first quarter, yeah, I think that's a good one.
See, we're going the first,
No, this,
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
no. Oh, Jesus Christ.
So we have World Water Day in the first quarter,
World
We have
Water, yes.
Arbor Day and Earth Day in the second quarter so far.
I-
Earth Day's a big one already.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is most people recognize Earth Day. I think Arbor Day is a little less known.
I think it's been forgotten.
Sure.
So maybe we get a run of willows and plant them for the beavers along the edge of an impoundment.
Okay.
World Turtle Day, though? Were you serious, Mike, or?
The reason, and I'm just going to indulge me here for a moment, on the roller coaster, when all the turtles come up out of the pond to lay their eggs, there's this, all of a sudden I'll see people stopped on the road. And one lady I know who knows me and lives on one side and works on the other, calls me up on the cell phone and says, "There's a turtle. You're in charge of the turtles, now go get it off the road."
Yep.
So, Turtle Day for me.
So I guess, well, that's what I'm saying. If we're only gonna choose one, I would go with Mike on Turtle Day because it ties in more with our water adventures here. And,
Exactly, and it's a lesser-known
it's a lesser-known day, and I think we could probably get some support from Fish and Game for outreach materials and things like that.
Maybe we can even talk about beavers, cause turtles live in beaver ponds.
Yep. And I don't want to discount Wes, but I think there is is it Tree City, or there's some other group that does outreach on Arbor Day, although you're right, it's not as prominent. They do have, I think it's Tree City USA, or somebody does outreach on Arbor Day.
So why don't we have three?
Boy
Have
Scouts.
three in the second quarter. That's not a problem.
You can if you want, I'm just thinking of workload. I mean,
I'm swayed. I think the Turtle Day is a good idea. I think that maybe an article in the paper, like proceeding up into
Yeah,
that week
sure.
when the turtles
It's
start
important.
coming
I mean,
across
people
the roads.
Don't realize they're in the roads.
We get the picture of the painted turtle in the paper.
Eric Orff is retired from Fish and Game now, but as I remember him organizing turtle crossings and frog crossing like he would get volunteers out
Oh, jeez.
to assist, so he may also be somebody that could assist us with this.
That gives us a little time in between the first and
Remember
second
that
quarter.
thing we went to on streams and the types of culverts that they had?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
For
Yep.
wildlife
To
to
get
go
there.
through, and they put natural rocks and everything else in the bottoms rather than a big round culvert.
Mhm.
That'd be, that was interesting, and
I'll have to throw it out for the development of the paintball group up there on Route 3.
Right.
When they installed their culvert, and when it came back from the state, it was actually recommended, just like that, a natural bottom, and that's how they did it. And so I give them kudos for that.
So Mike, just to be clear, I've helped the same snapping turtle cross Parade Road 2 years in a row.
did he get you?
She,
No, I know how to handle them. It's the same one,
You know, but-
2 times. Anyway, okay.
Uh,
All right, so we're gonna have Arbor Day, Earth Day, and World Turtle
I
Day?
think World Turtle Day.
Just
Okay.
World Turtle Day.
World Turtle
Just
Day.
World Day? No, we can't just,
Not-
we're not gonna ignore Earth Day, are we?
Right.
I think
Day.
the whole thing on the Turtle Day is a great idea if we get something in the paper, a picture, and a little heads up of, you see these things out there, amphibians crossing the road,
And Turtle
Right.
Day, we could just do something as simple as an article versus.
Right.
This,
Arbor Day could be an actual event day.
Sure, we got outside with some little trees
I
and,
mean, you look at World Water Day is March 22nd, Earth Day is April 22nd, Turtle Day is,
May 22nd, 3rd.
yeah.
So do you
So-
wanna do Arbor Day or Earth Day?
I think Arbor Day.
Arbor
Arbor
Day.
Day.
Arbor
Earth
Day.
Day is pretty much covered by everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, I
Ooh.
So
don't
wait,
know if
what
you
are
ever
we doing?
watched the New Hampshire, I think it's New
Arbor Day
Hampshire
and
law,
Turtle Day.
the New Hampshire
Not Earth Day?
Conservation.
No.
It's on TV, and there was an article in the paper,
That bumps it up a week. That
the
bumps
last
it up
couple
2
of
weeks.
days, showed pictures of the conservation officers. It's on quite frequently.
Northwoods Law.
Yeah, I don't get
Northwoods
it.
Law, yeah.
Get it.
And I watched that when I can get to it. And it showed one of the officers stopping, picking up a turtle in the middle of the road, moving it off to the side where it was going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a good
And-
write-up in the newspaper
Right.
with pictures and everything else about that program.
Right, and you can tell which way the turtle is going by the way it's pointing. That's the way it wants to go. Seriously, that is how you do it. Anyway, okay, so we,
Nose first.
World Turtle Day, okay, so what about in the next
The
quarter?
third quarter, I'm gonna vote for World Water Monitoring Day, because we do that. We do the monitoring.
Oh, I
Sure.
think we have to
We
do
can put a
Honeybee
little
Day.
report in the
And we have to
paper.
do Honeybee Day,
We have to do Honeybee Day, though.
and that's also,
Oh, the honeybee's taking all the popularity. It's getting covered.
it's my birthday. I wanna do
Oh,
my
it's your
birthday.
birthday
Yeah.
too.
I wanna do my
Happy
birthday.
birthday
But,
to you.
but
Big
World,
22.
World Water Monitoring Day, we definitely have to because of all the stuff we do. We're paying for and all that other stuff.
Okay,
Yep.
So we're doing both of those or just World Water Monitoring?
Well, I don't know, there might be other things in
let's
that.
do both of
Quarter.
them, a National Honeybee Day and
Yeah, because that's
World Water
August.
Monitoring Day. All right, what else anything else in that quarter?
Let's see, starts in September's in the quarter, right?
July, August, September's the third quarter, so we're
Yeah.
going to the end of September. The fourth quarter starts October 1st.
World Rivers Day,
Okay, so in the fourth quarter, I have two in the fourth quarter. America Recycles Day and World Soil Day.
They ruined me on recycling in
Yeah,
this
I don't
town.
think recycling's a good idea.
Why?
Glass is trash. That's what
Yeah.
my community tells me. 50 years of telling me something else, and now.
You know, so,
There's a lot to, I mean, there's a lot going on. And Guilford's not happy and.
I think that the bringing recycling into the spotlight could be a good idea, but it could also, a lot of people might just, you know, if they hear from somebody else they shouldn't be recycling because it's all trash anyway, you know, a lot of work could be undone, and, you know, hopefully they
How
just
about if
keep-
we did, instead of like recycling, you like make it a reuse day? You know, so like you're not, you know, scrapping the plastic bags and straws and that kind of thing. Make it,
Alternative day or something like,
yeah.
I think that gets political. Straws and everything else, it's very political at this point.
Not really.
I mean, you could make that sustainability day.
Yeah.
That's true.
Sustainability is a nice catch-all for.
Yeah.
Yep.
so we're gonna rename November 15th?
no, they have a
Have us
sustainability day.
on in
Oh,
October.
I'm sorry, yeah, okay.
Fourth
Okay.
Wednesday of October.
Fourth
Yeah.
Wednesday of October, okay. That's good.
And
And we
World
should
Soil
definitely
Day.
do World Vegan Day.
I'm not laughing, I was looking at that, but so Dean was talking about
I was
World,
kidding,
World
actually.
Soils Day, and I know that NRC,
Tofu turkey for the family this year.
I know that, there are several organizations that have a lot of soils information or place, you know, things we could reference, for Soil Day, so.
Okay, so Sustainability Day and Soil Day.
Right,
So sustainability
So
day.
next meeting, we can start hatching out plans for the first event, which is World Water Day.
good, okay.
Sure.
And
Thank
would
you.
would we have to use our own funds from our budget for anything that we do, or we'd have to, okay.
Yeah.
That's another reason to
Sus-
ask for more money. It's like, we wanna
So
do outreach.
But we can also do things that are informative but not expensive.
Right,
Right, and
think-
can we use the entry?
Didn't do it.
okay.
Um,
It's,
Sustainability.
Oh, it's written on the back of it. That's 5, that's 4.
Just turn Dean off.
okay, it's 7:37 right now. Okay, so we have the even tide as docks done, right? Okay. Pearly Pond update. There is a shopping cart on the ice that should be removed while it's still on the ice and not under the water. Yeah, really. And so, Amy should take care of that. And I'm not suggesting somebody go out there. I think they could use, lasso it. Yeah, that's the way I would get a cowboy.
I know a guy.
do you?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Okay. Guilford Lake Shore, anything else on that, on the culvert replacement?
No update, I think they're all
Okay. Okay, then I'm probably not gonna do it until the spring. Ground's frozen now. Pickerel Pond, now we've all read about Pickerel Pond property.
A vendor question, RPF is doing the sampling, they said no asbestos as of right now. They're verifying the lab results, but now,
So no asbestos in the shingles, roof shingles, or the tar paper? Great, great.
Yeah,
Good. Okay. Okay. We don't need to do this now, but I think next meeting we should set up a date to start sampling tributaries and August Bay. Probably not until like April or May. Right, we have to figure out the budget first, thank you very much. Okay, state school property,
I have not attended any of these meetings.
I saw some stuff on there in the local paper where they, are moving that to, a construct that's less advisory and then actually has the ability to sell and do. And in that, they're going to do an assessment of the buildings they think they might want to save. They're going to do an assessment for mold and, yeah, and stuff like that.
Just
That's
how
what I
are we
read.
gonna be involved in anything that happens there? And no,
That's a state road.
no.
I don't know that,
I'm sorry.
I don't know if the Conservation Commission is going to do it. I don't even know if the city is going to do it.
Regardless.
And Mr. Chairman, may I chime in? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think too, the aspect of the development, of the agricultural piece of it, whether, you know, if they're going to be doing this ag maker space and all that other stuff might be of interest to us.
Yeah, if you could keep us up to date on that.
Yeah, I
Lisa,
will.
that would be
Thanks.
good. Thank you. Okay, anything else on the state school? Cyanobacteria. Okay. Milfoil management? It's all been done, right? We have it.
I'm still waiting to see numbers from the, so, still don't have any,
I think everybody's waiting to get.
What?
Okay. Anything from staff report?
yes, 1 second. So, okay, everyone did the contact information update. Okay, good. So,
You gonna send that out to us?
yeah, I'll put it in a spreadsheet and I'll just provide it to the members, so internally, if, like you had said earlier, you had tried to get a hold of Deb, but, I'll add mine in there as well, so if you need to contact me and ask if a meeting is going on at 5 PM and you can't call City Hall.
I
you can
think,
call me.
I don't think we can send it out, because if we send it out to everybody, then it's an official meeting. And we would have to, and it's a public meeting, so we would have to supply this information to the public. I mean,
But it's a resource, contact information is confidential for members. I'll just confirm with Dean
Okay.
about them before I send it out
I
to
have-
everybody, but
I have everybody's phone number, so I don't need it. So you can send it to everybody else, but not me. Maybe that'll get us past muster. Do you have Wes's,
when
do you have
she's-
Wes's information?
When she asks for, if we're coming for an RSVP, I don't think, does that go out to the city?
I don't know.
I
No,
don't
no,
think-
no, you know, it's the meaning of, it's the
I know.
public meeting. Anyway, I just don't want us to get in trouble.
I'll just double check with them before yeah, cause I know, well, there's the, right to know law where you're not supposed to be contacting each other about applications, but just because you have Deb's phone number doesn't mean you're gonna call her and ask her about the application. You could just ask her, hey, are you going to the meeting tonight? And leave
I
it
like
at
to
that.
use it as an excuse to not talk to Dean when I see him in public. I don't wanna, do any
I mean, you don't wanna
Put
be
up the
associated.
flyers.
It's like, oh, no, it's him.
No head. I don't know.
Oh.
Just trying to stay professional,
Okay, so anybody have anything else?
Sure.
Real quick, I saw Rebecca Sims today, who
Oh, yeah.
is an LA teacher at the middle school, and she went to training, I think, last summer with her son, and it was about water,
Mhm.
basically. And she has some different projects that she would love to do with her students, and she would love the commission's help. You know,
Okay.
like if she's doing something that we are And I told her, I said, we're so lucky because Wes is gonna be right upstairs.
I'll help out.
February 3rd.
Yeah,
But, and then, yeah, so I told her that I would just mention it tonight.
good. And, I think going back to the events, oh, okay.
Or is after.
Get it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it could be part of World Water Day.
Yeah, and some of those events, I think we ought to reach out to the schools and get them involved. Whatever, if,
It's good press, good PR.
Okay, anybody have anything else?
What's that next meeting date?
Next meeting date will be the 22nd, right? January 22nd.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Passes.